Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Real-Time Situational Awareness, Video Wall Design and Technology for the SOC, presented by Security Management Magazine and sponsored by Christie Digital. Christie Digital is a global visual, audio, and collaboration solutions company offering diverse solutions for business, entertainment, and industry. Christie has spent the last 30 years perfecting video walls that are purpose-built for the demanding requirements of control room infrastructure environments. My name is Mike Moran. I am the Strategic Publishing Director with ASIS International, and I will be your moderator today. Today's presentation will be 1 hour, including time reserved at the close for questions and answers. We encourage you to submit a question at any time in the Q&A panel. You will also see a resources panel where there are assets for you to download that are related to today's presentation. If you hold an ASIS International certification, your attendance today is approved for 1 hour of continuing education toward recertification. This credit will be applied automatically based on your attendance record for this event. Typical processing will take as much as 2 months, so if you have an immediate need for those credits, please contact the ASIS Certification Department directly. I'd like to introduce today's presenters. John Litt. John is a Senior Manager, Network Display Solutions, Americas with Christie Digital. John has worked in the electronics industry for more than 25 years. John started his career in the field of electronics with the U.S. Navy and went on to own and operate his own integration firm. John is a thought leader, presenting at many educational sessions while actively sharing his expertise and insights in many industry forums. We're also fortunate to have with us today Dan Gundry, Senior Control Room Specialist with Vistacom. Dan leads Vistacom's Control Rooms team, a specialty group working with mission-critical agencies and partners, integrating technologies into security operations centers, traffic management centers, command and control rooms, war rooms, data centers, and similar environments. Dan regularly presents for technology projects, mission-critical collaboration, and related seminars for various construction, engineering, and technical groups. Gentlemen, on behalf of ASIS, I'd like to thank you for leading this presentation today. Okay, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let me turn this over to John. John?
Thank you very much, Mike, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to this audience today regarding this particular topic. To get us started, I would like to just simply review the key takeaways that we're trying to accomplish over the next hour in review. Those are going to be best practices in visual display and visual display of information, specifically as it's targeted toward the Security Operations Center. We're also going to review some game-changing technologies that are seen in the marketplace today. And then we'll also look at a couple real-world applications in which these technologies are used in some actual environments. And then finally, we will conclude by reviewing some best practices for the design of the modern Security Operations Center video wall. To get us started, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to our partner, Dan Gundry with Vistacom, to get us started on the review of the Strategic Operations Center. Dan?
Thanks, John. So to confirm again, we are going to be talking about an overview or decision video wall as a tool set for visualization and collaboration within a Strategic Operations Center. The SOC, as we call it, is the nerve center of mission-critical operations. Its mission, keyly, is to monitor alarms and data, assess situations, respond to incidents, and then defend the enterprise. A SOC may be primarily focused on physical or cybersecurity, emergency operations, public safety, or government command and control. It's frequently also seen as an operational element in process control, utilities, and network operations. An SOC may have an overarching mission such as global security, or it may be site and or task specific. It all depends on the individual concept of operations. So to continue on this theme, listed are a number of different names for SOCs. For example, an ISOC, an Information Security Operations Center, is one name for a Cybersecurity Operations Center, whereas the term Fusion Center was originally coined in government command and control circles. And for every name that's listed, there are several that are not. The name or the type of an SOC is not the important part. The important part is that the mission of the SOC is aligned with the business goals and the concept of operations, its functional mandate. For today's conversation, we'll use the term SOC or SOC as an interchangeable term for any type of operational command center. So I have been inside countless security operations centers over the years, and those visits have helped to shape my perspective on efficient and inefficient control room design. The SOC pictured here is a fairly typical small to medium enterprise security operations center that we see out there. Displays are slapped up on the wall with no particular order. From the look of the different display models, I count at least 4 in the picture. These seem to have been added and or changed over some period of time. Displays are connected directly to a given workstation, which may or may not be what the operator is already looking at. It's primarily focused on cameras. There is TV in the upper right-hand corner, but there's no other data beyond those cameras. No access control logs, no visitor management system, no maps or imagery, no employee travel tracking or social media analytics, no computer data of any kind. The visualization element in this space is also inflexible, meaning I cannot get different content on those displays based on an incident I may be managing, and it is incomplete, meaning I do not have ready access to other data that may be important to help manage a particular incident. At the same time, an idea is there. Someone in this organization said, I need to see what is going on beyond what my operators are doing at their workstation. I need to see an overview and a common operational picture of shared content so everyone in the room is on the same page. It's just the execution that is uneven at best. Today's strategic operations center. The modern operations center. What is relevant to today's SOC is more than just video cameras. It's about whatever specific content and data is important to your enterprise to help make good decisions and to respond efficiently. Today's SOC is about collaboration. Stakeholders are not always in the same office area as the SOC. They may be in a different floor, a different building, different campus, different state. They need to have ready access to the same information no matter where they are. Information's coming in and going out to field operatives. And integration with intelligence systems is also key. The proliferation of security cameras means that an SOC today could be looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of cameras. So let's find a better way to look at only the relevant cameras and alarms. Bringing in that ad hoc real-time content into the decision-making chain is also growing in importance, especially if it's generated in the field and or available solely on someone's mobile device. Most importantly, supporting a common operational picture so everyone is on the same page real-time, which improves not only situational awareness, but also situation management. To that end, I think we have a poll question coming up here.
Yes, we do. Let's. So we have about 400 people on the line right now. Let's go ahead and do a little ground truthing. Based on the definitions of both yesterday and the modern SOC, how would you describe your own security operations center? And we'll take a moment just to let those come in. Okay, that's a good number. So let's see what we have here. 39% yesterday's SOC, 22% have a modern SOC, and a substantial number have neither. How does that look compared to what you're seeing in the field?
I would say that's actually pretty common. And if that's the case, then this next slide is possibly going to blow your minds away. Because not just having a modern SOC, but also understanding where that content needs to point to becomes increasingly important in today's world. So at the nucleus of an enterprise-wide mission-critical operations center is the command center. But that content may need to go out to other stakeholders in other locations, whether that be first responders, backup centers, even a break room where I can see content that's going on so I'm not missing a beat while I may not be in the room becomes increasingly important. The War Room or Incident Management Suite in the top left corner is intended to be a place for stakeholders and or executives to meet to manage specific emergencies. The concept is to let the SOC operators maintain business as usual, defending the enterprise, monitoring what they need to, while specific incidents are offloaded to another place and another team to respond and resolve. But that team still needs access to the same information as what's available in the SOC. If you're a government entity and or you work closely with government agencies, connecting into third parties can be an essential part of an emergency response plan, whether that be your local police or fire departments or interagency cooperation. So again, to that point, one more question coming up, Mike.
Yeah, let's take another quick poll so everyone can see where their peers are. Do you currently manage emergencies and situations from inside your SOC, or do you have a separate crisis management room for those incidents? We'll take a moment to give everyone a chance to respond. And they're still coming in. Okay, that's a good sample. So here's what we're seeing. 30% currently managed from inside the SOC. 29%, just about the same, have a dedicated crisis management room. And 10% have to book a conference room. So what does that tell you?
So for those facilities that have an SOC, this makes sense. There's one rationale that says we manage incidents from inside of our SOC, and another that says we have a specific concept of operations determined and we have fought to get a specific crisis management room. What is of interest is the 30% saying none of the above. The question that I would follow up, although we don't have it as a poll question, is it none of the above because you have not documented that emergency response plan, that SOP, and that concept of operations, or is it for another reason? Questions to ask yourselves as you go along and you filter through what your concept of operations is. So here, in terms of the big picture, this shows an example of how content's coming in from a lot of different places on the network. It also illustrates the type of information and content that's important to this particular type of SOC, in this case, a cyber defense command center. But you can translate this example to your own operation and ask what is important for your team to monitor. For example, a global security operations center with responsibility for employee travel tracking is going to be looking at much different content than a hospital's security command post that's monitoring infant security and radiation detection systems. What is important to your enterprise? And once you've identified what content's important, you can ask, where is that content generated? Is it on a common network? Is it on a combination of networks? What are the available means to bring that content into the SOC to visualize the data? And what access and security may be required to do so? Sketching out this big picture becomes a critical component to designing the right workflow and the right systems that support that workflow. So let's talk a little bit about the video wall system as a tool within today's command center. So now that we've identified the problem with today's or yesterday's SOC environment and outlined some best practices of how an SOC should look and operate, let's discuss the video wall as one of those ingredients. A video wall within a security operations center is not a nice to have, or my boss saw it at someone else's site so he wants one too. A video wall should be seen as an indispensable tool to promote that situational awareness and provide that common operational picture. At a glance, a stakeholder or an operator can look at that video wall and understand what's going on in the enterprise at that given moment. If planned for and deployed properly, and if trained and supported correctly, the overview video wall system will enhance life safety and property protection while providing a very specific value and return on investment to your security operation. There are a lot of factors that go into planning a video wall. right? When you're planning it from scratch or updating, there are a lot of factors in consideration. A technology partner will help evaluate the SOC from a number of different perspectives. They'll engage you in a productive needs analysis and help design and recommend solutions that speak to all of these criteria. However, having said that, our time today is pretty limited, so we're going to focus on display and processor technologies. And to that end, I welcome John back into the conversation to discuss those key ingredients of a video wall system.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. So, in review of the video wall operation system, excuse me, we've talked about, of course, it being a single dashboard in front of the Security Operations Center, which is allowing everybody to have a single dashboard to be able to view that data. If we basically broke that video wall system down into its primary components, you could essentially put it in these three buckets. You could put it into a content bucket, combined with a processing or switching solution, combined with the display solution itself. The content, as Dan was mentioning, is your content. It's what's important to you for your specific workflow, for your specific organization, for your specific regulatory items that you need to be conscientious to. What we're going to focus on right now is access to that content, but we're going to be doing it via the way of the processing solution as well as through the actual video wall display itself. Now, to get us started with that, let's take a look at what the old Security Operations Center brought us. So when Security Operations Centers first started coming into existence, roughly about 20 or so years ago, they were relatively limited in their capabilities, size, and scope. And so what you're looking at here is an oversimplified graphic, but it could essentially have been computers, analog-based computers, with analog-based video that could potentially go onto a single monitor that may be located in front of the room. That may have been located on a table or desktop, or it may have been mounted on the wall as Dan was showing earlier. This particular image is actually very reminiscent of the image that we were looking at earlier as far as the yesterday's Security Operations Center. Very limited in capabilities, very limited in content ability, very limited in resolution, and of course the ability to be able to collaborate not only within the room, but outside and throughout the enterprise as well. As we progressed through the capabilities of hardware within the Security Operations Center video wall, we started bringing in video wall processors into the equation. With the video wall processor, we had now the ability to connect to multiple analog sources and then be able to connect that to a single video wall. This is referred to as a monolithic processor. It is essentially built for a given purpose. Again, it allowed us to have additional capabilities, being able to see more information at the same time over a single canvas, but we still were limited on input capability, access to sources, availability of resolution, and again, the ability to collaborate outside the Security Operations Center. Fast forward to today, to the modern Security Operations Center video wall system, and it is much more dynamic. Now we have the ability to connect to multiple video walls, either within the same room, same building, throughout the enterprise, or across borders. We also have the ability to bring that content down to the desktop level as well. And as far as source content, we have the ability to connect to digital computer sources within the room or outside the room, potentially network-based sources such as IP cameras, application sources running off enterprise servers, and we can even, of course, reach out into the mass media and bring in social media and or, of course, news feeds and a variety of other different types of sources. But as you may see, we have a lot more capabilities now as far as the ability to connect to the right sources and to be able to distribute them to the places where we actually need that information throughout the enterprise. When looking at a video wall, it pretty much breaks down into three core technologies. And so I'd like to do is spend just a few minutes discussing the three core technologies that are used on the video wall and why you may want to consider one type of technology over another. I would like to start by essentially saying there is no best technology for a Security Operations Center video wall. It is completely dependent upon the use case of what we need to do in that Security Operations Center. Those three technologies are DLP technology, LCD technology, and now LED technology. And then within each one of these product categories, there could potentially be different versions of that technology meant to be able to accomplish a given mission. Let's first and foremost take a look at a DLP Cube solution. A DLP Cube solution is a stackable technology, and I like to simply refer to it as a workhorse technology. It is something that once you've built it and put it in, it just keeps going and going. It truly does. It is a long-lasting technology that looks fantastic, that requires very little if no maintenance over a period of its life expectancy, which could be anywhere between 60 to 100,000 hours. Looking at that in a 24/7 environment, that is going to be roughly about 8,800 hours in a given year. So we're looking at a life expectancy here of anywhere between 8 to 12 years for this type of technology. It is able to create exceptionally high resolutions across the entire video wall, has very deep color and contrast ratio, with both work together to really allow us to be able to make the information on the screen pop out at the participants in the Security Operations Center. This is especially important for many verticals, but it really makes the difference between reddish or red with some type of content. And of course, this technology has the ability to be able to do just that. The disadvantage of this type of technology is it could potentially require a little bit more depth than some of the other technologies that we're talking about. So as a result of it, we have to plan for that depth when we're integrating it into a particular Security Operations Center. If space is a challenge, another solution still within the DLP family of products is the MicroTile solution. The MicroTile is just what it states. It's a small tile. It is the exact same technology as the DLP Cube that we just referenced, but is in a much smaller footprint to now where we've reduced it to just over 10 inches in depth. It still has exceptionally long life to it, and of all the technologies that we're about to discuss, it actually provides us the highest total resolution across the video wall than any other solutions that we're discussing. The disadvantage of this particular product is it could potentially be a little bit less energy efficient when we're looking at the wall as a whole. The comparison, what I mean by that is this. The DLP cubes that we're just looking at are roughly about 1 amp of power per cube. That's exceptionally efficient and requires a very low load across the entire wall to keep it driven. The MicroTile, on the other hand, also requires 1 amp of power per cube, but you're using a much larger number of cubes. And so as a result of it, the power load is going to be higher than, of course, with the larger cube. But it still does provide for a fantastic presentation across the video wall. The next technology will be a DLP projection technology. Many of you may be familiar with these, of course. There are 2 different types of projection that we use today. There would be DLP and LCD. You do not want to use LCD projection in a 24/7 Security Operations Center. It is not a 24/7 grade type solution. It will not last. DLP is where you would like to be able to put your focus if you are looking at projection. This can be a very affordable solution. It also has very easy installation to be able to put it in. It can be exceptionally space friendly for us. And of course, a single light engine is going to be covering a large area. The disadvantages, though, that we want to look at when it comes to projection technologies is it does have a shorter life expectancy, combined with the fact that it could potentially also have a higher operating cost over the life of the product. And what I mean by that is that there are lamp-based solutions, and there are also now what are referred to as laser phosphor solutions with projection systems. With a lamp-based product, you're going to be looking, depending on the make of the model, you're going to be looking at changing out lamps every 1,500 to 2,500 hours of its life. That would pretty much mean that, again, in a 24/7 environment, you're going to be changing lamps on approximately 3 to 4 times a year to keep the product operating efficiently. There are laser phosphor options that are certainly available, and laser phosphor has an expected life expectancy right now of approximately about 20,000 hours. Now, at 20,000 hours, which sounds like a very attractive number, and also with the fact that we're not having to change lamps, also sounds very attractive. But what I would caution the Security Operations Center manager with is planning for its replacement or servicing 20,000 hours down the road. That's going to be roughly about 2.5 years if you are using this in a 24/7 environment. One of 2 things is going to have to happen at that point. Either, number one, we're going to have to replace the projector altogether with a new model, or we have to remove the projector. It has to be returned to the factory. Not all manufacturers can do this. Christie can, though. It can return back to the factory, and in a clean room environment, it can then be refurbished with a new laser engine, and then, of course, then sent back out to the job site to have it returned to service. So we would have to plan for not only the expense, but also the downtime that would be incurred for that. Just something to watch out for. And then finally, from a room design perspective, it is much more dependent upon the lighting conditions within the space. Now, the next technology, those were the DLP. The next technology we're going to talk about now is LCD. And the LCD, unlike the projectors, there are some LCD flat panel solutions that are rated for 24/7 operation. Not all of them, and please be careful when you're looking at different products for this, but there are some that are. This type of technology is now very commonly used and is very space friendly in the sense that it can be mounted directly to the wall. It can also be potentially much more affordable than some of the other technologies, and also can provide for very high levels of resolution, as we could with the DLP cubes as well. The LCD flat panel technology has come a long way, especially over just the past 3 or 4 years. It's come a long way, and that's what now enables us to be able to use it quite regularly within a security operations center environment. However, let's look at some of the disadvantages or the things that we must watch out for from a design. Number one, out of all of the 3 technologies that we're talking about, it does have the shortest life expectancy of any of the other technologies. So it may not be uncommon for you to purchase 2, potentially 3 video wall solutions in the time you may own one of the other types of technologies. This is something to take in consideration when evaluating acquisition costs, not only at the time of acquisition, but of course over the life expectancy of the system and or of the room. It can be prone to a lack of image uniformity, and what I mean by that is simply just because of how the LCD technology works as compared to DLP and even LED, which we're about to talk about. It may not necessarily allow us to be able to have an even level of color or white going across the entire wall. So therefore, this is something to watch out for. You've probably seen this as you're at your local airport and you're going down the escalator and you're looking up at the video wall up above you. I would challenge you to go ahead and just note the color uniformity of that particular video wall and see what it is I'm referring to in this particular case. This particular technology can also be much less energy efficient. Just to put some numbers to that, these type of displays could draw anywhere between about an average about 2.5 amps per display as compared to the DLP at 1 amp. So you can see it uses approximately about 2.5 more times of power per device, but you're going to need more devices to be able to cover the same amount of coverage space as, say, a DLP Cube offers. So again, something to be able to watch out for. Serviceability over the life of the video wall is something you definitely want to take in consideration. It is highly recommended that in a critical space or in a security operations center, you purchase some critical spares at the time you purchase the main video wall. The reason for that is if a particular display was to fail over that life of that particular wall, one, you'll have another display that you can easily replace it with very quickly, and with today's mounting solutions, that can be done fairly easily, either with yourself or with the assistance of your integrator. But number 2, if you have not purchased any critical spares, 2 to 3 years down the road, we would hope that we would still be able to have the same type of shape display to be able to put into that particular opening, but it's not always a guarantee, specifically looking at some select manufacturers out in the marketplace. So this is something to definitely watch out for. And again, as I started off with mentioning, some brands and models are not 24/7 environment. You could have one model within one manufacturer that is, and you may have 2 more models that may not be. So it's just something to be conscientious to. And then finally, the last technology for a video wall is the new direct view LED solutions. This is the newest technology that's available into the video wall space. You may be familiar with this of signage that you may see on the outside of buildings or, of course, on billboards. Of course, this is a much more fine pixel pitch in the product to allow it to be used indoors and also very close to the video wall itself. It does provide us exceptional brightness, exceptional color uniformity. It is also very space friendly. Some products require both front access and rear access to it, which you may have to plan for that. But some other products like Christie offers may just require front access, and so you only need to be in the front, which means that I can mount it directly to an exterior wall, for example. And with LED, and this is one of the attraction points with many security operations center control room managers that we work with, it does not have any bezels across the entire wall, so it's a complete surface going all the way across. Now, cons when looking at this is you may be challenged in the way of resolution, which means that because the LED has a pixel pitch that is much greater than that of LCD and DLP, and just for convenience factor, what I mean by pixel pitch is the distance between the center line from pixel to pixel. So with LCD, which is approximately at 0.6, DLP, which is approximately at 0.5, the LED technologies today are at 1.2, 1.5, 1.9, 2.5, and onward and upwards. And so as you can see, there's about half as much information that I can put within either a given square inch or a given square foot across that video wall, which means that we will be limited in what we can provide as far as resolution. This also brings into play visual acuity considerations. Visual acuity is the ability for the human eye to be able to make out some information that may be on a wall. So as a result of it, smaller letters, smaller numbers, smaller pieces of information on your content may be a little bit more challenging to see given the pixel pitch and also the distance a viewer is back from a wall. It's all about mouth first when we look at this. Finally, of the technologies, this is the most costly of the visual display technologies, and I would offer this word of caution. As a manufacturer, we see a lot out there in the marketplace as far as how other companies are conducting themselves and how, of course, we conduct ourselves. And what we are seeing is there are a lot of overseas companies, primarily from Asia, that are literally filling the market in both the United States as well as Canada with some questionable product. Of some which are not even UL listed, and most are not even FCC certified as well. So please be conscientious to that and work with a quality manufacturer and or integrator to help with that selection process. Now, best practice note, recommendation, please use professional grade displays when you're putting together a security operations center. Why do I recommend this? The reason why I recommend this is because this is going to provide for more longevity and reliability to you, which can be a pretty open statement, but I would like to simplify it in this simple way. So if I talk to an engineer, we can have a whole hour-long conversation just on this, but to simplify it is this. The number one problem you have with a display in the control room or the security operation center market is the fact that it builds up heat. And what causes heat? Resistance causes heat. What causes resistance? Poor electrical components that are used within the product and or bad electrical design within the product as well. Those are compromises one has to make to be able to lower the price of a given product to be able to offer it at a particular price point. But it also has a byproduct, and that, of course, is going to be heat. So something to watch out for. A professional grade display is intended to be used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the most critical of environments. So that would definitely be something I would recommend for your security operations center. Now, pulling all of this together, let's look at them side by side. So with an LCD technology, as we mentioned, that's a very affordable technology. It is relatively easy to install, and it's also very space friendly. So you can go into an existing space and install it. The disadvantages we're going to have with the LCD, again, is going to be potentially poor uniformity across the entire wall. It is the lowest life product out of all the video wall technologies we're talking about, and it is not field serviceable, as we talked about as well. But it will give you about 3 to 5 years worth of use before it is you're going to need to replace that wall. The next technology, being DLP, offers us incredible resolution, incredible visual acuity, so the ability to be able to really see the details in the content. Deep color and contrast ratio, which really makes the content jump off that screen, if you would, and is field serviceable. So it's really used quite a bit in some of the most critical control rooms out there. The disadvantage of that product, of course, is the depth that you're finding with that particular product. One other thing I would like to mention with DLP is it requires no maintenance or no service on it whatsoever. And that particular product would last you approximately about 7 to 12 years. And then finally, LED. Incredible uniformity across the wall, an exceptional level of brightness which can be controlled because not all control room security operations centers need the brightness. We actually may need to bring it back some. But it does offer no bezel across the wall, and it is also very space friendly in the sense that it can be mounted on a wall or in a fairly small area. The disadvantages of it is it does offer lowest resolution out of any of the video wall technologies that we've discussed. It is the most costly today, and again, I would caution you, please buyer beware of this type of technology as well, making sure that you're using a reliable manufacturer and integrator and/or consultant to be able to assist you in the evaluation and selection of this product. However, this product, again, will last you about 12 years. Now, from a budgetary standpoint, the last column may be of some interest to you. So with the cost factor, what I've put on here is a 135. It's worked out pretty well for me. Quoting as many systems as we have over the number of years, I've pretty much been able to come up with this formula. So the purpose of this is that if you take the price of any given LCD video wall, that would be simply a 1x factor. But if you multiplied that price of an LCD video wall times 3, you could potentially come up with a working budget of what a DLP video wall may end up costing your company. In addition, if we're looking at LED, it would be a 5x factor. Now, these are not scientific. Sometimes they're lower, sometimes they're a little bit higher. It all depends on an individual use case, but it is something to be able to watch out for. With that said, I'll hand it back over to Mike for our next poll question.
Yes, thank you. Let's go one more time to the audience so we can find out what kind of technology is in the market right now. So, in your current SOC, what type of display technology are you using? And we'll just give a few moments for everyone to respond to that. Okay, that's a good number of respondents. So let's see what we have. Certainly 54% LCD. DLP Qs are way down at 2%. Projection at just 5.6. Direct view LED at 8.3, and 35% do not have a video wall. Does anything surprise you in those results?
No, it's pretty consistent what we are. I would say that the direct view LED at 8% is a little bit of surprise to me. I was expecting that number to be a little bit lower and the DLP number to be a little bit larger. But as far as projection and flat panels, no surprises at all right now. These are good numbers for us to look at. Okay, so moving on. The display by itself, we're going to switch gears now from the display now to the processor technology. And the display by itself, let's be honest, you're not buying a display. You're not buying a display, you're actually buying the ability to be able to see information. That is what we're truly after when we're building a video wall system. As a result of it, access to information is paramount, and that's where the video wall processor comes into play. There are different levels of processors out there. There are the monolithic processors, which we reviewed earlier, which is basically a purpose-built processor. There's a distributed processor, which we're going to talk a little bit more about here in the next few minutes. Show control processors, as well as potentially even a computer workstation could be used with some size video walls. So first and foremost, let's look at what the challenge that we have today with the Security Operations Center when it comes to getting access to the content. First and foremost, there's just a lot of information out there. There's a lot of information that's coming out the operators. They're coming in from different places, different formats, and different resolutions. It can be coming from a variety of different types of sources, whether it be application servers, computers, mobile devices, television tuners. But you know what? At the end of the day, all you really need is to make sure that your operators in your control room have access to the information and they have it quickly. Now, if we don't necessarily do it very well, what are the risks involved to us? Number one risk involved to us is informational overload. If we get too much information, what ends up resulting is we start missing things. We start missing alerts. We're actually decreasing situational awareness instead of increasing situational awareness, which is, of course, our goal. It could put potentially personnel and property into jeopardy. Capital losses could be involved, of course, operational downtime, which is not good, and then, of course, finally and ultimately a decreased return on your investment, which is not good. So a best practice, a solution that we would offer you to consider for your Security Operations Center would be the use of a network-based video wall management system. This is a highly effective solution that allows us to be able to take a great amount of information, catalog that information, and then make that information available to the Strategic Operations Center. It provides us that situational awareness dashboard. You know, just as you step in your car, you can look and you can see everything you need to see right in front of you. This will do the exact same thing across the video wall. This type of solution also helps, or can integrate well, I should say, with consolidation efforts that you may be doing within your own IT departments, and it can also work with cloud-based computing solutions out there as well. But most importantly, as Dan was mentioning, you know, before we were confined to simply what's in front of me or what's in this room, with a distributed video wall processing system, we have the ability to not only go outside the door of the Security Operations Center and reach beyond those walls, but we can reach not only throughout the walls of the building, throughout the campus, the state, and possibly across the world. I like to essentially say is that if you can touch it via either your network or through a direct connection, you would be able to utilize that source. So a distributed video wall management system is both a hardware solution and a software solution. We use both of them together to be able to accomplish the end result. It will aid in your security information and event management workflow. So again, whatever's important to your particular organization, it allows us to be able to take all the information that you deem important for your Security Operations Center, bring it into a security environment, and then from there be able to display it across the wall. It does provide us that complete aggregate view of the entire situation, which is ultimately what we're after. Now, some of the features and benefits that a distributed video wall management system can offer you is first and foremost content mobility. It doesn't matter where the source is. As I mentioned previously, as long as I can touch the source, I could potentially use the source. And that touching of the source may be through a direct cable, or it may be through an IP path, through a network. We could be bringing in high definition content, 4K content. We could link to application servers, IP cameras that may be out about in the world, social media, or even, of course, other computers which may be both inside the control room or outside the control room as well. Collaboration in the sense that I now have the ability to not only just communicate to that one video wall that may be located in front of me within the Security Operations Center, I now have the ability to actually connect to multiple displays. So that may be multiple Security Operations Centers with video walls, or maybe the Security Operations Center in one space, and then of course there may be an executive briefing room in another space, as Dan was talking about. We could also bring it down to the individual desktop computer as well. Next, it has to be scalable, and this definitely provides for that capability. So you can start with something very small and then grow into it over a period of time. So for example, if you're just wishing to be able to put one wall in a Security Operations Center, but you have other Security Operations Centers that you wish to do a refit at a different time, this technology will allow you to be able to do that. So you can go at your pace with this particular system, as well as add any number of users to the system, so we could potentially have access down to the individual desktop as well. Simple and powerful. I like to say it simply like this, is that as long as I've been doing integration, I've been part of some fantastic installations out there. But most importantly, what matters to me is what you as the end user feel about that system 2, 3, 4 years after you've had that system installed. So anything that we put into a Security Operations Center from a video wall perspective should be simple, it should be powerful. We need to make sure that every level of user within that Security Operations Center can use it. So a distributed video wall management system tries to deliver on that promise and simply provides a drag and drop capability. So simply double-clicking a desired layout, which is how a wall may look, or if you need to change the source, pick the source, drag and drop it where you want it. It should be that simple across the whole wall. Distribution of another benefit here is this gives you the ability to observe multiple sources of information while enhancing the Security Operations Center ability to orient, decide, and act in response to that condition, thus enhancing your situational awareness, safety, and security. Some of you may refer to this or may recognize this as the OODA loop. So this is basically the process that you use to be able to orient how you're going to respond to a situation, and the distributed video wall system allows you to be able to do that. It allows us to have a great amount of capabilities of bringing in multiple levels of content, so DVI or HDMI, but also a network source, so an RTSP, MPEG-4, remote desktop protocol, VNC sources, application servers potentially, and even still images. Finally, bringing all that information together, wherever it may be, we bring it all together, we catalog it, and then we allow it to be displayed across a digital canvas known as the video wall itself. Users still, though, have the ability to have very dynamic control, so they can change layouts and they can change sources on the fly with the distributed video wall management system. Some security considerations for you to use as best practices is one, plan for system redundancy. A distributed video wall processor will allow you to do that by avoiding having a single point of failure in the system. A system should be able to support Active Directory integration, so therefore where you've got your user sets, your groups and your usernames and your passwords, that can of course apply right up to the system. But also it should be able to support a multi-level password directory internally, so you can have admin users and just basic users on the system. Group security could potentially mean that some users have access to some content, but not others. Other users may have access to some walls, but not others. But it does have the ability to be able to provide for that. Security compliancy concerns are always a concern, specifically targeting towards your particular business vertical. If you're a power company, for example, NERC-CIP may be important to you, so therefore this would potentially have the ability to be able to offer that. HTTP support, which basically means is I can take a digital television tuner, being a cable box or satellite box, and plug right into it. And finally, it should be able to work within your network restrictions. And then finally, API control. So with API control, this is the ability for us to be able to link the system into other solutions, being other hardware solutions or software solutions, to allow automation of events within the Security Operations Center. So in the eventuality of an event there, we can have a layout trigger. A layout can be automatically triggered to change. We can change a source, or we could potentially have a red border or a green border appear around a particular source to draw some attention to it. Or you could also use those color borders to be able to indicate situational awareness, or situation condition, I should say, such as green is good and red is bad. Now, how this comes together, here's a typical architecture of the system, but a video wall could be connected back into the node via AV cables. Sources in the room could also be connected to AV cables to nodes within the system, but all those nodes are going to connect back to a switch, and that's actually how they communicate to each other. That switch would also allow us to connect to all the computers that may be located within the Security Operations Center, allowing them to not only be potentially a source on the system, but it also be a point of control on the system. And you can determine, do I want a single point of control, or do I want everybody to have control of it? In addition to that, by going to the upper right of this image, I could reach out over the network and to be able to pull in the other formats we talked about as well, such as RTSP feeds, our remote desktop protocol sessions, VNC connections, still photos, and the like. And if we step back and we look at this from more of an enterprise-wide perspective, the top left of this particular image is that Security Operations Center with its sources connected to the processors, connected to the walls. But then we also have the ability to break it into other smaller rooms, such as the meeting rooms, which you see directly below, or even down to the desktop computer if we needed to do that as well. We'd also, of course, have the ability to reach out into a data center and bring back an application source and bring it back into a video wall, allowing it to be displayed. And by running over your network, you could also have an off-site location where there could be an alternate Security Operations Center. It either may have a completely different purpose or may serve as a backup for the main SOC as well. And that information can, of course, be available to both of those control rooms or multiple should you desire to have that. So in summary, here's what we would recommend. Benefits of a situational awareness dashboard: being a video wall system allows everybody in the room to be able to have access to that information, which of course is providing for you to have the most expeditious response. Selection of the right video wall system or display technology, I should say, is very important. So therefore, we can help look at that. And then finally, a distributed video wall processor allows us to be able to catalog the available content for the Security Operations Center that may be available from throughout the entire network, arrange it into easy to understand information, and then allow it to be able to be operated or used by the operator within that particular space while still maintaining dynamic control of the system as well. And finally, in closing, just a couple case studies real quick. One that I worked on was within the state of Iowa. It was the Iowa Communications Network. It was a network operations center that had both sources within the network operations center, but also in its data center there on the state campus, but also had the ability to be able to reach out to other sources that are distributed throughout the entire state. I think 2,200 was the count that we were looking at. But the ability to be able to have all of that information accessible from this one particular room and then have the ability to be able to display it across a single dashboard on the front side of the room. This was so successful here that we actually did another backup network operations center for this particular end user, and they were able to connect those two network operations centers. And now we're actually working with them on deploying one for the state CIO's own security operations center, which of course will get information from these other SOCs as well. So we used LCD displays as well as a distributed video wall management system to be able to pull all this together, not only at the individual locations, but multiple locations throughout the state. The next case study I'd like to give back to Dan. So this is a project that he worked on with us. Dan?
Yeah, so this was a project we did for the largest state-run public power organization in the United States. This SOC had a very specific mission to monitor its operations from a network, cyber, and physical security perspective in defense of their smart grid initiative. What I think is really important about the photo that you're looking at is that the layout of the room is configured to provide the overview video wall, relative content, allowing for collaboration hubs on either side of the room. You can see it in the far upper left corner, collaboration hub where people can break away into small groups, manage a particular issue, and then come back to the greater group. Desks are also set up far enough away from each other that an individual operator can focus on task-level activities while a small group of people may be gathering around somebody else's workstation managing a smaller or more minor incident. But everybody can stay on task, traffic flow being of utmost importance. Chose DLP cubes here because of life cycle, high resolution of the graphical content, the different type of web-based content they were bringing in addition to other high-resolution SCADA and what have you, and the overall total cost of ownership. This particular client evaluated total cost of ownership over a 10-year lifespan, another reason why they chose cubes over flat panels, projection, or other technologies. So to that end, I'll wrap things up here by leaving you with 4 takeaways. In terms of understanding how a video wall solution is an essential ingredient within an SOC, further understanding that there are different video wall technologies and products available, and that A, they're not all created equal, and B, fit the right solution to the right problem and requirement, meaning that today's SOC utilizes a distributed network-based system to get the right information to the right people at the right time. And last but not least, most importantly actually, engage experts to help you develop a plan, design the system in space, deploy it professionally, and then support it and the enterprise over the life cycle. So thank you, and to that end, I'll turn it back to Mike for questions.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, John. Yes, we have a lot of great questions coming in here. I would encourage you to go ahead and ask your specific questions. Those, if we do not have time to get to them all during the presentation today, we will follow up with you online after the event. So without any further ado, our first question. ROI is easy to sell when integrating facility monitoring software, HVAC, fire, med gas, as well as security IP cameras as they're being planned. We currently do not have an SOC. Any considerations we need to think about for combining facilities and security design? And I'll just tip that off to both of you.
Yeah, this is John with Christie. We've actually ironically just written a white paper on that very topic. So we're seeing a lot of applications where the SOC is having multiple uses within the enterprise, such as being used for training or presentation areas, as well as some other uses. So we actually have written a white paper on that we can make available to you, but also, of course, we can work with making sure that the technology in the space has the ability to be used for both of those purposes.
Okay. Next question. Are there best practices available with regard to ergonomics and or operator to monitor ratios? What type of resource material would you recommend to cover some generalities of the workspace design within the SOC?
Dan, why don't you take that one because you work with that a lot.
Yeah, so there are some great white papers and resources out there on human factors engineering. There are no hard set rules with regards to operator to monitor ratios. Things like sight lines become important the type and size of text, the type of displays, lighting, ambient conditions. Consoles, are they sit-to-stand or just stationary? So a lot of those things become really important in the discussion. Like I said, there are some white papers and some very good resources online with regards to human factors engineering. Feel free to also reach out to us separately, and we can provide you with some more data on that.
Very good. Our next question. How can the video wall, or SOC, increase the relationship between business continuity and crisis management plans?
Yeah, so this is Dan.
That's an open.
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
No, that's fine. Go ahead, please.
Your video wall system is an integral part of business continuity and emergency response. The processing that's underneath that hood determines how flexible it is with regards to that emergency response plan, that crisis management plan, and where you're going to set forth some of that content, how you're going to manage the network with regards to the sharing of content. So it has the ability to improve that plan, again, with the right steps taken to ensure that we're aware of disaster response and that we're aware of business continuity planning so that we can incorporate that into system designs and network architecture. Most importantly, communicate with your experts.
Very good. Our next question, they'd simply like you to speak to dashboards and KPIs on a video wall.
Yeah, this is John. That's actually very, very common within a wide variety of different types of control rooms. And of course, those dashboards or KPIs can be made available from a wide variety of different types of sources. Many today are actually made available through basically browser pages, essentially a website, and you may have multiple sites. A distributed video wall management system would be able to access an individual page on a website as a source onto the system. So, for example, I'll give you an example. One power company's control room that I worked with, they had 22 different browser pages with different KPI dashboards across each one of those pages. We actually registered each one of those 22 sites as an available source onto the system, and then therefore the operators could go ahead and make that available across the span of the video wall. They could see all of them at one time, they could see one of them, they could see none of them. It's completely up to whatever they wanted to do. In addition to that, we can bring each one of those dashboards or those KPIs down to the individual desktop level as well. So it can be something that can be done through an application source, or it could actually be done through an actual software solution available through many different companies. We work with some companies like Honeywell and Siemens, for example, that have their own software solutions that provide for that type of information. But their particular computer stations would be hands-off. But we can simply take a video out of those particular stations and then push it back into the distributed video wall management system for use right up onto the video wall alongside other information that they may want available. So yeah, that is a key point so that you are going to want to look at in a security operations center or any other control room.
Very good. An audience member notes that no mention was made of using plasma displays. And they wanted to know, are they an old technology or of a quality not fit for a strategic operations center?
Not at all. Plasma technologies is fantastic. So if you go in my family room, you'll find a plasma TV hanging above the fireplace. It is exceptional video quality. But plasmas are prone to burn in. And when we're talking about security operations center, especially going back to the last question of KPIs and dashboards and potentially even surveillance cameras, you're going to have image retention into that display. So plasma TVs and television monitors are definitely something you would want to stand clear of within a security operations center.
Very good. Our next member is asking, is there a baseline content or data suite that is distributed with the physical hardware, or is that always a very customized solution?
Dan, why don't you approach that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I 100% understand exactly what the question is, but the concept of a video wall processing platform should be something that's easily configured by users based on your specific content, not necessarily that's customized. Customized limits you. Configurable means that you control your own destiny in terms of what you're looking at, how you're visualizing it, and that can change from shift to shift, day to day, incident to incident. So understanding that a good video wall solution and the processing layer that's beneath it allows for that flexibility in configuring and gives you the tools so that it is affecting change and improved responsiveness is what a good video wall processing solution is all about. It should not be proprietary. It should not be customizable. It should be configurable.
Very good. Gentlemen, if we can take one more question really quick. How many strategic operations centers do you see using PISM, and is that number growing?
Yeah, so PISM is still alive and well from our perspective, and as I said, we sit at a very different seat at the table when we talk about command centers and security integrators. That's not what we do. We focus on the visualization and collaboration element. PISM is still an important layer in there. John mentioned there's a slide about the API. That is the critical ingredient on the processing side because that's what's going to allow the video wall processing platform to be part of a PISM environment in order to translate commands, automate triggers, and bring up that right content on the video wall at the right time. So we still see PISM as being alive and well. It's a very individual kind of thing out there. For some enterprises, they truly believe in it and deploy it and are heavy users of it, and some not so much. But the important thing with regards to video wall design is to make sure that you're aware of it, that we're aware of that platform, and that we can integrate and talk to it so that you're effectively using your PISM with your video wall, not against your video wall.
Very good. Gentlemen, the clock is our enemy. We have a lot of great questions still, but we've run out of time. I would remind all of the attendees to check out that resources panel. One of the white papers mentioned is in that resources, and it's available for download. As well, there's a lot of other good information in there for you to check out. A link will be sent to you by email tomorrow. That will also include the slide deck, and you can download that at that time. As well, please feel free to share this with your peers. It's of course, free for them to attend as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have for today's presentation. I'd like to thank you all for attending today's Security Management webinar. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Christie Digital, for making this event possible, and both John and Dan for sharing their expertise. For ASIS and Security Management Magazine, I'm Mike Moran. Have a great day.